Thank you for staying with Citizen Extra. President Uhuru Kenyatta will today inaugurate the 12th Parliament, paving way for the bicameral House to officially start transacting business. Before going to Parliament, President Uhuru Kenyatta is expected to chair a joint parliamentary group meeting of both Jubilee senators and members of Parliament at State House, Nairobi. We understand that that meeting is currently ongoing. And as that meeting goes on, we are also joined in studio this morning by Jarvis Bigambo, who's a political analyst. We're also joined by Chris Wamalwa, the Community Member of Parliament. Also with us is Jemima Kelly, she's a lawyer, and also with us is former Mwingi Central Member of Parliament, Joe Motambo. Thanks for staying with us in this second hour of Citizen Extra. What are we expecting the President to touch on? There's a wide range of issues. So as he makes his address to the 12th Parliament this afternoon, Joe, what are your expectations? What issues do you expect him to be raising?
I think peace in this country is paramount, Lillian. And I expect him to talk mainly about peace. You know that his election was overturned, and there's a lot of reaction in the country. I think it is important for him to emphasize on peace, and I'm expecting him to dwell so much on peace. Then number two, there are also some pending bills in Parliament, which I think he will also encourage the members to make sure they expedite. You had my sister here talking about the two-thirds gender rule, which is very also important. There is a court holder which is lying there, which we also need to look into. So I'm expecting him to confine himself within those parameters. Yes.
For you, Moshimiwa?
I think when it comes to addressing the nation or the parliament, the president is supposed to address current issues. And one of the critical things he's supposed to do, for example, the two-thirds gender. And by the way, I want to clarify that once the session is over, all the legislative bills, they die. We have to start afresh. So there's no business of going back what was pending, no. That one dies with that particular session. We're going to start afresh ones. But if somebody wants to maybe to come up with a legislation, he can be able to refer. So in this context, the issue of the two-thirds gender is on top, because as she clearly puts it, there was a court case, I think, sometimes back, and Lichuma, the lady in Gender Commission, you know, the two-thirds gender issue, that one is on top priority. Secondly, they also expect the president, of course, to talk about the issues of, now that we are going for the elections for the president, matters to do with peace. Of course, he must encourage Kenyans to go vote peacefully, and more importantly, focus on the issue of the credibility of elections.
What about the approval of a supplementary budget for the conduct of this repeat election?
No, that we already did. I think in the previous parliament, we managed to expedite, to bring it behind by about 3 months. So matters of the budget we actually finalized. And that's why initially there was this narrative of changing the electioneering timing, because it interferes with the budget cycle. So that was taken into care of, and matters of the budget we finished. Even matters to the supplementary we finished. Even the money that IBC is asking, I remember in the last part of it, we handled that. So everything in matters of budget we already finished towards the tail end of the other term. So another issue is, I've talked about the issue of the IBC. He can't run away from that. The Supreme Court made a ruling, and we were told there were issues of credibility issues, the issues around elections. He must make a calling to the Kenyans to conduct themselves peacefully at this time when we're going to elect the new president. And maybe he might also use that opportunity to campaign. Maybe also put across priority his manifesto, and we've seen both in the manifesto of Jubilee and that one of NASA, the issue of free secondary education.
Right.
So that has to be prioritized, so that when legislators start coming up with the bills, they must be able to prioritize those critical issues.
I'll be back with you, Jarvis, and yes, okay, I'll be back with Jarvis and Jemima for your reactions as well. As we cross over now to Parliament, where Francis Kashuri is on standby together with Stephen Letor. We expect the president there this afternoon, where he'll be inaugurating the 12th Parliament. Let's listen in to what's happening on that end.
Well, Lillian, indeed we are with the Francis Gashuri outside Parliament buildings, of course trying to keep tabs and see what is happening outside the National Assembly and the Senate presence. Remember, the President of the Republic of Kenya, President Uhuru Kenyatta, has called for a special sitting or a joint sitting of the National Assembly and the Senate that kicks off at 2:30 this afternoon.
Absolutely, and I see some confusion. Is it the first sitting of Parliament or is it the first joint sitting of Parliament? Because when members of the National Assembly and the Senate a fortnight ago met for swearing in and election of the respective speakers, it was the first sitting of the 12th Parliament for the individual houses, the Senate and the National Assembly. So today they are meeting for the first time jointly. So it's the first joint sitting of the 12th Parliament, that is the bicameral Parliament of the National Assembly and the Senate. But of course, little questions are being raised, especially by the opposition or the National Super Alliance lawmakers. They are questioning the legitimacy of President Uhuru Kenyatta to convene this sitting, bearing in mind that his re-election was nullified by the Supreme Court. But in calling for this special for this sitting or the opening of the 12th Parliament, President Uhuru Kenyatta has cited Article 132 of the Constitution that gives him the mandate to address the first sitting of Parliament after the general election. He's also citing Article 142 of the Constitution on the term of the President, that the presidential term begins from the date he was sworn and ends here to make sure that President Kenyatta, when he comes at around 3 o'clock, will be all right. And for now, the Jubilee team says the president is substantively in office. For this sitting, most of them from the Jubilee side, and these are some of them who have not actually gone for a but we do understand he's at State House.
If the Supreme Court had not...
We'll be talking to Francis Gashuri and Stephen Leto very shortly. Again, President Uhuru Kenyatta will today inaugurate the 12th Parliament, paving way for the bicameral House to officially start transacting business. Javas, to you, what do you think the top agenda for this Parliament should be? Jemima here and of course also Mheshimiwa have talked about gender balance being a priority for you. What do you think the key issues that this Parliament should be looking into now are?
Well, you see, upon ascension of such national office, all leaders elected must be the harbingers of hope and progress. That is the general aspirations of the people who gave them that mandate. And looking at the very many gaps that still exist, and also the various, the kind of direction that, for example, the Constitution gives on matters of gender, etc. This 12th Parliament, which is being opened on this 12th day of September, the year of our Lord, has with itself very critical responsibilities that it hopefully should get to achieve. One, the people then are asking themselves, will this 12th Parliament have the honor of succeeding in passing the legislation that helps to achieve the 2/3 gender rule? If they do, then all glory will be to it, as opposed to, say, the 11th Parliament, which struggled with that effort. Their thing, for example, would be, and looking at how the questions of matters devolution still are, whether this time round, that national piece of legislation, especially with, through the House of the Senate, of public participation will come to fruition. The general expectations of the people in this country are high. Looking at it, you realize, yes, that the Jubilee has got the majority in both houses. The presidency yesterday pronounced that they can pass various pieces of legislation, but I think the passing of various pieces or various bills for ascension by the president should not merely be for scoring political goals and points against, say, NASA, just to send a political message. It should be a question of making sure that whatever kind of bills in that house, whatever kind of act that gets to be, or bill gets to be assented to by the president to become law, is for the good of this country. And therefore, when members stand or take to the floor, it should be important for them to wear the robe of fair-mindedness and reason, just for the good of this country.
And to you, Jemima, as things stand, the President Parliament has already violated the 5-year transition period, as well as the 1-year extension provided for it to pass this legislation. For you, what should be the way forward in terms of priority agenda for this 12th Parliament?
Well, on the issue of the 2nd agenda, I expect the Attorney General to move with speed and move the Parliament with the necessary bill. Of course, it is expected that with a court order, the Attorney General would initiate, as actually now the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Ministry of Justice and legal issues, to move Parliament by preparing the necessary bill. Whether you will go back, as Mheshimiwa said, and refer to an earlier bill, just present it to Parliament, and so that it is tabled in Parliament at the earliest. Of course, we expect that the President, the Jubilee Party having the majority in Parliament, they would also be, he would also be selling the Jubilee Manifesto to the House. And of concern of course, to the citizens is that the President will also need to remind members of Parliament of the provisions of Article 10. As you know, under Article 132, the President is supposed to report once in a year the progress in realization of Article 10. So I expect the President in his speech that he would also remind the members of Parliament of the provisions of that law. Among others is the issue of the economy. It would be naive for the President or any other member of Parliament not to note the current state of the economy. We have a big debt to clear. We have been in campaign mode for almost a year. The business is not doing well, so we expect members of Parliament to pass the necessary bills and the necessary measures to ensure that we not only recoup what we have lost, but also to cushion the business sector and promote the economy. Yes. And
to Mheshimiwa Mutambo, when I want to quote the President's statement here, where he spoke about the boycotting of Parliament by NASA, where he said, you will see us opening the House and start passing bills. If they don't want to participate, who has held them back? It is their right to come and go as they please. And even if they boycott, what difference does it make? Zero. Standing orders are there. We have prepared the bills that were pending in the last Parliament. Elaborate on that statement.
I think that he was very ignored us by saying that, and I want my good friend to agree with me on this. He touched the issue of forming committees in Parliament, and those committees can be formed even without them. The only mandatory committees as it stands today, which are supposed to go to the opposition or to the other side, is pick and pack. But the other committees can be formed and business will proceed. So that will not stop the business of the House. Okay? And I think that is what the President was trying to tell Kenyans, that the business of the House will continue whether members of NASA or ODM will attend or not. Because what we need is a requisite number to make laws. And that's it. It did not go beyond that. Right? Anybody who want to amplify that, then that is their own cohesion to think that way. But my opinion is that the President was sending a message to Kenyans that there are members elected, whether from whichever corner. And don't forget that these members will attend Parliament, not only from Jubilee, also from independent parties. They will attend.
Talking about the equation from the independent parliamentarians and how they expected to align themselves, Javas, and when it comes to indeed passing these relevant bills, let's talk about that equation and how we're likely to see those numbers play out within Parliament.
You see, the political edifice of rights and liberties that are bestowed on independent members of that House gives them the right and the opportunity to vote as they will. And that is why they owe no allegiance to any particular party. However, we know very well that upon election, various members of, who ran on the ground of independent, whether they got into the House, the county assemblies, or now the national level as parliamentarians, they find themselves easily aligned to certain political parties in terms of ideology and voting or interests, because of regional extraction. So it is largely expected, for instance, that all or possibly nearly all independents who hail from the side where majority members are Jubilee, they will find themselves easily aligning to the agenda of Jubilee. Those from the Western region will find comfort and satisfaction aligning themselves with NASA. And that is the liberty due to them. So we're likely to see that. However, we know very well that because they owe no allegiance to any political party, and knowing very well that they are the bridesmaids in that house, each side will want to do their best to court them. But then in the end, they must remember that they must carry that spirit of independence all the way through the term of the parliament.
As we continue this conversation, I will be wrapping up very shortly. Let's listen in to Francis Gashuri and Stephen Leto, who were talking to us earlier in Parliament from Parliament grounds as we await the inauguration of the 12th Parliament this afternoon by President Uhuru Kenyatta.
Well, thank you, Lillian, again. Indeed, we are outside Parliament just to see how things are unfolding ahead of President Uhuru Kenyatta address of the joint sitting of the bicameral Parliament. Remember, the President has convened the House for the first time after the, or what we term as after the nullification of the presidential election. Gashuri.
Absolutely, and apologize for the sound mistake.
Yes.
I should have done. But yes, the first joint sitting of the 12th Parliament. Remember, the members of the National Assembly and the Senate were here a fortnight ago for the swearing-in ceremony in the respective houses and the election of the speakers of the two houses. And so one would say this is the first joint sitting of the 12th Parliament, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has cited Article 132 of the Constitution in convening this House. The article says that the President shall address the first sitting of Parliament after the general election. And there have been questions about the legitimacy and legality of the session that he has convened today. Of course, members of Parliament from the National Super Alliance are insisting that President Uhuru Kenyatta does not have the constitutional mandate to convene this sitting. But yesterday, speaking to members of the National Assembly, especially from and the Senate, especially from Jubilee, they're saying that Article 142 of the Constitution gives the President a clear term, or is clear on the term of the President, that his term began the day he was sworn in and shall expire the day he will hand over to the successor President if he will lose on the 17th of October during the repeat presidential election. And so basically the two sides of the political divide making various presentations or arguments insofar as this sitting is concerned, but as it is now, the sitting is shall be held this afternoon, and preparations, you can see, are in top gear.
Well, talking of that particular confusion, Gashuri, it is that very confusion that has led the members of the National Super Alliance to give a threat, or really to say that they are going to boycott and give this particular joint sitting of the National Assembly and the Senate a wide berth. But there are questions that have been raised regarding why should the members of the opposition keep off a joint sitting of Parliament instead of going into that chamber, listen to the President and criticize his speech. Remember, the standing orders say that after the presidential address to Parliament, there will be an immediate debate of that particular speech by the President in the subsequent sitting of Parliament. What do you think all the members of the National Super Alliance, that is about over 120, will they heed to Raila Odinga's call that they should not attend today's sitting?
I believe a majority will, but definitely there could be some who will defy that directive when it comes to the National Assembly and the Senate for the joint sitting. You remember, during the swearing-in ceremony of the members of the two chambers, there was a threat by the National Super Alliance lawmakers that they will only attend the swearing-in ceremony but will not participate in the election of the speakers in the respective houses. But you saw in the two chambers, those quite a number of the National Assembly members from the National Super Alliance skipped the the bit on the election of the speakers. They participated in the swearing-in, but some came. When you look at the Senate, the minority leader in the 11th Parliament, in the Senate, Moses Wetangula, was in the House when they were electing the Speaker. And so were Senators James Orengo, Mutula Kilonzo Jr., to mention but a few. So most likely you're going to see some NASA members of Parliament attending today's session. Those who feel that probably they need to come and hear what the President has to say. But I believe a majority will skip. Remember, there will be a parallel function that will be going on, I suppose, in Kibra. There will be a rally that will be addressed by the NASA leader Raila Odinga, as well as his co-principals. So you can expect that quite a number of the national members of Parliament from the NASA team will be heading to Kibra, while their colleagues will be here in Parliament for the joint sitting of
well, Lillian, and of course it will be very interesting to note how many members of the National Super Alliance will boycott this joint sitting, and how many will attend another sitting or another rally, or a rally that will be graced by Raila Odinga in Kamukunji grounds in Kibra constituency. But of course, today, like you've put it earlier on, it was a day, if the Supreme Court had not nullified President Uhuru Kenyatta's re-election, then today would be his inauguration ceremony or swearing-in ceremony at the Kasarani Stadium.
Absolutely, and when you look at the constitutional timeline, the Supreme Court had 14 days to hear and determine the presidential election petition filed by NASA flag bearer Raila Odinga. And when you count, if the Supreme Court had thrown away the petition filed by NASA leader Raila Odinga, today would have been the swearing-in ceremony of President Uhuru Kenyatta at the Kasarani Gymnasium. Why? Because the law says if the petition was thrown out, you count the first Tuesday 7 days after the verdict of the Supreme Court, and so that first Tuesday would have been today. So I mean, I've seen even arguments being made that probably even the choice of today as the day of the opening of the 12th Parliament is also very political. Political in the sense that probably President Uhuru Kenyatta still wants to show who is boss. You remember his statement in the last few days that even chiding his competitor in the October 17th presidential rerun, Raila Odinga, that he is a candidate while he is the president. And so you will expect a lot of military fanfare here just to try and show who is boss. But these are political issues, and we can expect that quite a number of political happenings will be taking place between now and 33 days or so to the day of the presidential rerun.
And of course, after the election of the Speaker and the swearing-in of members of Parliament, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Justin Muturi, gave members of Parliament, or particularly in the National Assembly, a 30-day resting period, or so to speak. But essentially, today's joint sitting, or today's special sitting and official opening of Parliament, means that that particular day is rendered as now it has been annulled technically, and that means that Parliament now begins its sittings officially. We will wait to hear when the Speaker of the National Assembly. Remember, in this joint sitting of the Senate and the National Assembly, the presiding Speaker is the Speaker of the National Assembly, and so we'll expect to hear when he will, up to when today's sitting will be adjourned. We can say that the House reconvenes tomorrow, and if it does, then remember the standing orders say that the presidential speech will be deliberated on by members of Parliament for 4 consecutive House sittings. Then if they're going to meet tomorrow, they will do it tomorrow in the morning, in the afternoon, Thursday afternoon, and Tuesday afternoon. Those are the 4 sittings, the immediate 4 sittings, or the immediate consecutive sittings of Parliament. And so we wait to hear when the House will reconvene after it is adjourned today. Well, and also, Lillian, remember today Parliament will also play host to several other visitors. It's not only the President, despite being the chief guest of today's session. He will be accompanied by the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, several ministers, that is cabinet secretaries. There will also be several envoys representing several countries also making their way. In subsequent, in previous sittings, we saw members of the opposition or leaders of the opposition, Raila Odinga, Kalonzo Musyoka, making their way to the public gallery also to, view the president's speech. But today it's very unlikely to get the opposition chiefs, having in mind that they have also already said that they are going to have their members boycott this sitting.
There's no chance for them to come here today. I don't foresee it at all, because they have instructed their lawmakers to skip today's sitting. So it will be a misnomer for them to attend a session that they have asked the members not to attend. And so a lot of activity will be elsewhere for the opposition team, especially as they have convened a rally in Kibra. The other members of the executive will be seated at the Speaker's Gallery. There's also other invited guests who will be making their way to the public gallery. Remember, the president, after as a country we enacted the constitution in August 2010. Pure presidential system. Then it means the president and the executive is not a member of parliament. So the president is also a visitor to parliament, although he has a constitutional mandate to address parliament at least once per session, or any other time that there is something of importance that he has to come and say. So we can expect that there are constitutional parameters on what is supposed to come and do. He's supposed to come and outline the government's legislative agenda. Number two, he's supposed to come and outline if there are any international treaties and agreements that the country has entered into. He's supposed to come and give the country an update. And thirdly, he's supposed to talk about matters of national cohesion, integration, and unity. So those are the areas that we expect him to touch on. But definitely, bearing in mind that it is 33 days to the repeat presidential election, you can expect President Kenyatta to touch on the upcoming presidential race, probably even drum up support for his re-election, and maybe talk about basic issues about the preparations. Remember, this presidential, the fresh presidential election, there are budgetary issues in it, and so you can expect that IEBC will present a supplementary budget to the National Treasury, and the National Treasury through the Budget Committee is supposed to bring that supplementary budget so that they can be able to access the about 14 billion shillings that they have budgeted for in the repeat presidential election. So the 12th Parliament has its work clearly cut out for it, especially on matters of availing the necessary resources for the presidential election to be conducted. And if there are any other necessary amendments that need to be made on election laws or any other law, then Parliament will be in place to take care of that. And while there are questions about the legitimacy of the convener of the session, the 12th Parliament has its work clearly cut out for it. Remember, there are pending issues like the gender principle bill that lapsed when the 11th Parliament, their term ended, and so that bill has to be reintroduced. Then remember, by the time the 11th Parliament its term expired, they had not agreed on the nominees to the East African Legislative Assembly. There was that tug of war between NASA and Jubilee then. So they have to sort it out. Remember, Kenya has 9 representatives in the East African Legislative Assembly. By virtue of the numerical strength, Jubilee will have 6 nominees, while NASA will have 3 nominees to the East African Legislative Assembly.
Well, Lillian, those are some of the issues that we are expecting President Uhuru Kenyatta to touch on today. You've had issues to really whipping the National Assembly to ensure that it passes all the constitutional bills that were pending from the 11th Parliament. The issues of the East African Legislative Assembly that is not yet constituted until this moment is also some of the issues that are pending inside Parliament. Of course, and the government legislative agenda, as well as what the government intends to do in its 5-year term. Remember, when he comes to Parliament today, he assumes that he is still in charge and he is still the president according to the Constitution. Remember, Gashuri told us earlier on that the president remains the president until he hands over power to another president during the swearing in. And as for now, he continued to discharge his presidential mandate here in the National Assembly. Of course, any moment from now, as minutes build up, we are going to see military who are going to, make the drills and prepare themselves for the afternoon. Remember, it's a full presidential ceremony whereby the president will have to inspect a guard of honor before getting into the National Assembly for that particular joint sitting. But most importantly, Lillian, is what is turning out to be a clash between the opposition and the ruling party, that is the Jubilee Party, saying that the National Super Alliance members will not attend today's sitting. Of course, we've been able to speak to some MPs from the National Super Alliance. Others say they do not see the need of keeping off this particular sitting, while others remain bullish that they are going to accompany Raila Odinga and other NASA principals to come Kunji grounds in Kibra, that is in their afternoon rally, in what they're also terming as their address to the nation. And those are what we are keeping an eye on. Already several flags have been hoisted here. The East African, the EAC flag, we have the country's flag, as well as the military flags have all been mounted. That means any moment from now we are going to have all systems go here in Parliament. For now, we want to hand you back, but later on we'll be able again to link you up, Lillian, with whatever will be happening from this particular point. We are with my colleague Francis Gashuri and our other colleague Faiza Maganga, who is joining us shortly, and of course we'll be able to bring you the very latest from Parliament presence as and when everything unfolds. Back to you in studio, Lillian.
Many thanks, Stephen Leto and Francis Gashuri, staying with that story as we await the opening of the 12th Parliament. As we close with the panelists in studio, to you, Mheshimiwa Malwa, we're talking about the rally that's expected later this afternoon at Kamkunji Grounds in Kibra. Is this a unanimous decision for you as NASA that indeed all your members will not be in attendance in Bunge this afternoon as Parliament opens? And for those who opt to go, what are likely to be the consequences of their attending?
Yeah, thank you, Lillian. I've been a whip of the coalition, and as outlined in the Political Parties Act, when it comes to matters of Parliament and the coalition has taken a stand, it is a requirement that all the members of that particular coalition has to abide by that stand.
Although, as you heard from our reporters, there are some that have actually been spotted there. No,
you can be spotted there. Maybe you've gone there to follow up on your security or maybe other issues. It does not necessarily mean that you're going to attend. And in case someone is going to go contrary to the expectations of the coalition, so we have sanctions. And that's why we have these issues of Political Parties Act. My friend John Mutambo here was a victim.
Actually with
no, he was de-whipped actually from Wiper the time he tried going to bed with Jubilee. And it costed him his seat. That's why he's miserable here today. And secondly, Lillian,
I think that's a low blow.
On a light touch, my friend, on a light touch. The people of Mwingi Central, of course, they made their decision. And the gentleman who came in when I met him in Parliament, everyone were welcoming him. Oh, you are the one who put Joe Mutambo down, and also Munuve, because they were like, no, we're going to make it. And we told them, no, with the Ukambani, Wiper is a party to watch. Now they're in wherever they are. Now, to further on what you've said,
and in line with what Java spoke about, in line with what he spoke about national unity, you boycotting this afternoon's opening of Parliament to go and hold a rally in Kibra, isn't that an infringement and indeed abuse of your being elected into office by the electorate who expect to see you represented in Parliament?
As I said earlier, Lillian, when you look at that Article 132 of the Constitution, where the President is supposed to inaugurate a newly elected Parliament, the assumption is we're also having a new President coming to set up his agenda, legislative agenda for the next 5 years or so. But this issue has not happened. After the nullification of the presidential results by the Supreme Court, His Excellency the President should have waited for this issue to wait until after 1 month.
And you've been able at that point.
For us as NASA, we are going also to tell the Kenyans. That's why we have a rally in Kibra, to explain to them the reasons why we decided not to go. Kenyans need to know, because it's not legitimate, and we cannot go there to legitimize an illegality. From our perspective.
Let me get your parting remarks as we close this conversation. Jarvis, Jubilee has numerical strength, and that we do know, and the President has reiterated that over and over again. How then will any sober debate come out of this House?
Well,
Mheshimiwa here spoke about this being about national issues and not really being about either side of the political divide. So this not being about Jubilee and not being about NASA. But what are your thoughts?
You see, Lillian, the journal of our queer political circumstances are such that our times are very interesting. And history will record and will never forget that which the present leadership and even legislators do or omit to do. So then, attaching their responsibilities and authority to the very tenets of our democracy and the devotion to those values that we aspire to as a nation, captured in Article 10, it would be important for them to remember that their shoulders must be broad enough to accommodate not just the tasks and responsibilities before them, but the very interests of our nation and the people at large to take our country forward. That propagating merely sectarian political interests does not serve the interests of our nation. And that is why, for example, a few legislators now are behind bars for having spoken in a manner that is so dishonorable. Moving forward, I think, my appeal would be, and even to the team led by Honorable Chris Wamalwa here, the NASA leaders and the Jubilee leaders, that they must summon their present energy and engagements to that which is important for making Kenya a great nation. And history will bestow upon them the honor of moments such as this.
Your thoughts, how any sober debate will come out of a house where Jubilee has majority numbers in both houses?
Before I answer your question, Lillian, and I would wish you grant me right to reply.
Oh, sure. To the low blow.
Yeah, I think Chris is being mean, and he is in a coalition which lost, and he's not talking about that. Raila Odinga
lost. We might in power. That is very wrong.
So as Joe Mutambo lost, all right, you don't know the action and the decision of people of Mwingi Central took. It was their decision, and we have to respect them. And we cannot demean that because Mutambo lost, that he lost because he went to Jubilee. I don't want to take merits and demerits of how I lost my seat. That is a debate for another day. But what I want to say is that it is important to respect the will of the people. If people of Mwingi Central decided to give this gentleman a chance, I respect that. And I wish coalition of Wamalwa could also respect the decision of Kenyans who voted for Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta. But that, putting that aside, I expect today, I don't think there is a lot of discussion today in Parliament. It is only the President who will highlight whatever you want to highlight. There is nothing to discuss.
Looking forward.
Looking forward, of course, yes, we anticipate a lot of fireworks in Parliament because there are so many things Wamalwa is alluding to, that Jubilee is about to remove the Supreme Court and blah, 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 all those kind of things. But those are just assumptions. I don't expect any sensible member of Parliament to debate anything outside the context of national unity.
And to you, Jemima, as we're close?
Yes, for me,
I think we're out of time.
I would call upon the new Parliament, as it commences its business, to remember that Kenya is greater than whatever political dispositions they may have, to forget about revenge, like this issue of wanting to remove judges of the Supreme Court just because of a decision they made, which they made under their mandate. I think as a country we have other bigger priorities. We have the economy, we have national cohesion, and all these other issues which we must deal with. I would wish the Parliament to focus on what is greater for the Kenyan people.
Right, and I thank you for your thoughts. And as we stay with Citizen Extra, former Machako Senator Johnson Mothama and Gatundu South Member of Parliament Moses Kuria, both of whom were arrested yesterday for questioning over claims of hate speech, will be appearing at the Milimani Law Court very shortly. They were arrested yesterday following allegations and claims of hate speech. We'll be staying with developments there as we look at what is likely to be the outcome of those claims over them making inflammatory remarks. We are taking a short break now. With me in studio was Joe Mutambo, who is a former Mwingi Central Member of Parliament. I was also joined by Jemima Kelly. She's a lawyer. Also with us was Kimini Member of Parliament Chris Wamalwa, who says he will not be attending today's opening of the 12th Parliament, together with other members of NASA, and indeed Javas Bigambo, a political analyst. We're back with more in the next hour. Stay with us.